So for me, I definitely think that it's such a complex thing that we're going through. I mean, we've never gone through a pandemic and been in it in my lifetime. So it was one of those things where I'm definitely wanting to make sure we're keeping people at work, but we're doing it safe. We're making sure that we are supporting them. We're not saying, okay, well, let's get back to work, let's get back to normal, because people are losing their lives. And, we're starting to see the uphill battle for this. We're starting to get people vaccinated and things of that nature. So I think for me personally, it would be to continue to trust the people in positions, continue to trust science, continue to trust our health professionals, and then from there go back to the drawing board and figure out exactly where in that budget can we not cut, but take from to pour back into our community to help them stay sustainable. So yeah, that would probably be my approach with that.
Right now, we have the rent assistance program, and to help people stay in their homes through their bills and stuff. We have the grants that we have for small businesses that we put forth through money that we received for the COVID relief fund. And it's really hard because so many people, the businesses are going out of business, the community are suffering tremendously, and a big percentage of our budget is done by taxpayers' money. So with the community hurting the way it's hurting, that budget is going to be tremendously low right now. Where we have a $300 million budget, we may even be cut by $100 million. So say a $200 million budget, that just put us in a bad situation. And you have our firefighters looking to get, a better pay. You have our city workers want to start at $15 an hour. You have our community members who have paid and put into taxpayers to put into the pot. And at this point, it's like, hey, we're in a very uncomfortable situation to even also help. So I just think we need to continue to find organizations that will be willing to donate and help when it comes to feeding, when it helps to come to clothing, when it helps to come to rent assistance. And we just keep on with the programs that we have. But all of those need to be tweaked, because a lot of times, a constituent, when you're having a hard time, you have to go through so many levels to get the help that you need. And that's just checks and balances. But I think we definitely need to figure out an easier way to make it so that our constituents can get these resources, but protect the value of the resources to make sure they're going to the right places.
Well, I have a good example as far as I referred a young man to go and apply for COVID relief, help, financial help. He's a working young man, 40 hours a week, but with the hours cut back and all that, you still have your rent, your car payment, and so his job, they were rotating full-hour shifts with the employees to help them out, which is good. So I had suggested that he apply for one of the city grants, and he did. But it's such a runaround. It's not an easy process and you're zooming to get a response right away. It may be a week, it may be a two, and now you're 2 or 3 months behind in your rent payment. I think the city should do a better job where they house the money, because they spread it out in different areas, United Way and other little departments. And I think you should. And he was only allowed to apply once. And once is not enough if you're behind in mortgage, rent payment. I think the city should allow them to maybe get help for 3 months rent, kind of work on that part of it. And it's a lack of communication. So we found out the hang up with him not getting a response back was, and the young man in the mayor office, he was working with us. And he asked me one detailed question that we didn't think about. The young man that I was referring had already applied for assistance, but he had applied for electrical assistant. This assistant he was pursuing for rent, but we found out you can only apply once, one or the other. So, people need rent, they need light bill, they need it all, covered at least a couple of months. So It worked out. It worked out.
Mhm.
His job called back more often and had more work hours. But you do hate to see a hardworking person to fall behind when they've been able to keep up their bills. And that's happening to everyone.
Well, right now, the city has a grant program that's helping small businesses get back on their feet after being impacted by COVID. I own a business. I'm the CEO of Tennessee Transportation Partners. We employ about 3 individuals, and we drive for UTC, Carter, and Chambliss Center, and we haven't driven since December. And so we're one of those small businesses that have been impacted by that. And luckily, we've been able to rely on aid from the federal government, and we're probably going to apply for some assistance from the city government. So I think it's just really important to make sure that small businesses, especially minority businesses, have access to information and have access to capital to help keep their businesses afloat. And so as our next city councilman, I plan to support that, and making sure if there are city funded programs that's included in the budget, so that we can help small business, mid-sized business survive. The impact of COVID-19 will be impacting us for years to come. And so we've got to put some infrastructure support to do that. And I support that wholeheartedly, and will fight to make sure that those monies are in our city budget. And we're partnering with state and federal governments to make sure that money comes to Chattanooga small business owners like myself.
This is an ongoing fight. So it most definitely is the number one priority. And it's, you know, we don't have to mention it because we know that that's an expectation, right? That has to be done, COVID recovery. And so what my intentions or what I plan to do is what we're already doing, right? Making sure that we have funding for our small businesses so they can continue to thrive, making sure they understand the payroll payment incentive that the state has offered us. And then also making sure that we using our federal funds for HUD to make sure people are continuously housed and they have their utilities paid for. And anything else, we also supplying congregate housing for people who, are homeless or traditionally they don't have an actual place to live. So we can now house them in a hotel. Right. So we're not leaving anybody behind doing the effects of COVID, nor the 2020 tornado, because a lot of people lost a lot of things then as well, and businesses were disrupted too. And so we want to make sure we're continuing that. And also working with our state representatives and state senators and our congressmen to make sure they understand the plight of what's going on in Chattanooga and the recovery measures that we need to continue for our businesses to continue to thrive, to operate. And then as well as in District 9 and the whole entire city, like we have to support our small businesses, whether if you go and wear a mask and sit in and eat, or if you just order takeout. But we most definitely have to support and share the great stories of being, different restaurants that you've tried or different businesses. Support our entrepreneurs. And this way we can continue to grow and thrive and move our economy forward. What we already currently have, I think that is great. I think that we should have more community outreach. So whatever programming that we do have, so because we've heard consistently that people just don't know what we have to offer. People don't, people aren't tech savvy or, different things. They may not be on social media. So if we had individuals, navigators that were able to work in, communities that may not typically get the information, they may have no internet access or anything like that to access the information. So we had people knocking on doors, like a continuous campaign about the services that we have to offer, setting up little hubs, partnering with our churches and offering those same services available at our churches, at our YFD sites. And sometimes we may have to traditionally go outside of what the scope is or what we're used to seeing. We could set up a booth at a supermarket, right? Because we could capture people at a grocery store because we know they're gonna go shop for groceries. Well, at this grocery store location, you can have somebody stop, hey, I need help with my light bill. They can fill out the paperwork or whatever it is needed, or give them the information, schedule an appointment, and there it is, right? So we have to always think about ways. We're in 2021, and doing it the old way is just not working, right? In this century. So we have to think about things outside of the norm for everybody to, receive the help
first thing I would do is make them aware of the current resources that we have. When you have organizations like United Way, you have CNE, organizations that have rental assistance, any type of utility assistance, because those are immediate needs, as well as supporting the Chattanooga Area Food Bank, and also connecting them to resources within the city that have, the food resources, supply resources that they need. So that is an immediate thing that can be done, that can actually easily be done to connect people to those resources. In addition, promoting any type of jobs that are available within the city, any jobs that are, when I say in the city, I mean just the city of Chattanooga at large, promoting that, encouraging people to apply for these jobs, because it is hard out here, but we do have employers that are hiring. When I see companies come across, I'm on this email blast that sends across jobs that are coming, and I do that even at my job where I work. What we do is when I see jobs come across, if somebody talks to me and say, hey, do you know anything that's coming up? I send it over immediately to them and say, hey, this is available. This is a job, feel free to apply for that. So sharing that information, doing that, and also for small businesses, especially small businesses, because that is the backbone of our economy. That is the backbone of our city. They employ so many people across the city. So continuing to promote those incentives, any type of federal grant that we can get to continue to help them share and continue to help them grow, we want to do that. So any type of incentives, any type of grants, anything that we can do within my realm of influence, within our realm as a city, I want to promote that.
Well, first of all, as I said, if you got to chattanooga.gov, there is a lot of existing agencies, a lot of services. There's almost so much information out there, it's difficult to dig through all of it all. So it would be good to have an ombudsman to help folks to dig down to the area that they need for their assistance. I know that as the national changes have gone on, that there's going to be more support for COVID coming from the federal level. And so I would like to see us at the city level be able to divest that money to those in need. So I think short term, we almost need a task force to kind of dig ourselves out of this hole with I don't want to fund something for 2 years, but I think 6 months to get us through this would probably be a smart move.
I think that what the challenges that were dealt us in 2020 with the Black Lives Matter movement, COVID, and even the tornadoes, have exposed some areas where we really need to sort of refocus our efforts. I think that one of the things I'm proud about is in watching Chattanooga respond is that the social agencies in this town sort of rose to the occasion and figured out how to do food distribution, how to give rental assistance, and to work with that. And a lot of that obviously came from the federal government. So number one, I think that with the new change in administration in Washington, Chattanooga's got to be extremely prepared to look at how we attract stimulus funds, not only just from the programmatic stuff, but I think that everything that we're reading and seeing now is going to result in some shovel-ready build projects. I mean, if you look at the sort of the gold example of what's happened, with EPB being ready back in 2008, 2009, 10, with the deployment of the smart grid and the fiber network. I mean, and that wasn't a new project. That was one that just sped it up from 10 years to 3 years. We need to be prepared for that. Secondly, I think that and I'm encouraged by all the mayoral candidates talking now, is that we really, I mean, in sort of shifting the focus and priorities, I think that the things that I'm hearing most as I run a COVID campaign where I'm doing a lot of phone calls and talking to constituents is that we have sort of three areas that I would like to sort of see and be involved and be helpful to the new administration and they all involve strategic plans. One is on affordable housing, the other is homelessness, and then the other is parks and rec. But I would add education to that, and I think and to do that, and I think that if we don't rise to the occasion and seize the moment. We've got some structural issues to go do. And I think in affordable housing, which continually comes up, I will be ready to roll up my sleeves and work with the new administration, but we need a plan. We need an entity or a person that's sort of held accountable right now. We've got several organizations doing some wonderful work in Chattanooga, but you can ask sometimes who's in charge and you don't know. And I think that just needs a refocused energy and effort. The same goes on homelessness, as I think is that, dollars are limited. I think that what we've got to do is and I think there's been a lot of great work that's happened, but we need to really bound together. And I think that, in every neighborhood I have, homelessness is an issue in some way, shape, or form. And then the last is education. And I think all the mayoral candidates are talking about education, but we need a strategic plan that's a long-range plan that says the city's role is this. Is it clearly early childhood, digital literacy, after-school programs, mentorships. In some cases, the city doesn't need to be the lead. In some cases, it might just need to get out of the way. But in a lot of cases, it just needs to follow. And I think that to have that sort of look at sort of roadmaps for those three issues are sort of important. Now, a council member can only is one of 9 people, but I think is that having had a role in city government in a past life, I can be helpful to the new mayor and his or her team, and I can be helpful from a institutional memory of city council.
COVID has definitely taken those businesses have taken a hard turn, economic turn, from especially women-owned and minority-owned businesses, small business. We must support the bedrock of our community. Our local community are the small business. So what we'll do is I would create programs or grants in order to help build up those business again. And I think there are many programs we should keep, and some we should do away with right now. Right now, I would examine those programs, and at that time, we'll see where we have to make those changes.
My experience with COVID relief programs comes from a few different perspectives. First, as a business owner that did receive PPP assistance, and then also in the nonprofit space at Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise as we worked on an eviction prevention program, and then also as a person who's had to interact with these government programs. First and foremost, as we are able to open up funding from the federal government in our local space, I think we do need to prioritize our small businesses. And we need to be thoughtful about reducing barriers to accessing that money. And as we use that money also to aid individuals, reducing barriers is important as well. Because what I've seen is that we have mothers and fathers who have had to deal with eviction because they couldn't find the exact right paperwork to prove that they had lost their income because of COVID within a particular window. And when a pregnant mom who had to go on bed rest loses her home and has an eviction then on her record, it will destabilize her family for a long time. And what I've seen is that our federal dollars were tied up at the city level with some pretty rigorous requirements that it could be argued did more hurt than help, excuse me. When we think about helping our small business owners, the PPP program was not as helpful to our restaurant community because the money was tied directly to, the forgivable money was tied directly to salaries. And the reality is if you don't have anyone coming into your restaurant, then you don't need to pay wages to people to work at your restaurant. But if you can't pay your rent and you can't pay your suppliers for last week's food, then you won't have a restaurant for your workers to come back to. So I would definitely advocate for a very pragmatic approach, and an approach that is more hopeful than skeptical when it comes to how we set up our parameters so that the maximum benefit in the fastest amount of time can be seen for both our businesses and our individuals here in Chattanooga.
As far as programs are concerned, there are several programs offered, I say, by the various faith community entities. And I would hope that we would better our relationships with our community as relates to our city government, and that our community centers will be built up, that our community centers will be in the budget to where it will be equally for all of the community centers across the city, not just in one particular area. We would make sure that they would have the proper equipment in each of the centers. We'll make sure that would have the correct staff, enough staffing, and we want to make sure that everything is proportioned equally, and not just in one particular area, and that the budget allocations are fair, that the budget will go across all the various areas.
I have realized over the past couple of months, I know City Council has gone back and forth over what they should do with certain funds that they receive from the state. I do know that they gave city employees a bonus towards the end of the year, so that way they could kind of offset some costs or things that they may be struggling, because a lot of employees that work in the offices for the city of Chattanooga are working at home. So that, as well as city workers, they are struggling to take care of the needs that they need to in order to make sure their family is being taken care of. So, but there are some ideas that I have in place in regards to taking care of families and individuals and small businesses. So for one thing we could do is find, I'm sure there are funds somewhere, everywhere, somewhere in the state of Tennessee, even in the city of Chattanooga, that we could use to offset small businesses. Let's partner with some small businesses that are in the food industry. Maybe a stipulation or requirement rather would be, in order to qualify for this money, we would suggest that you offer meals at least twice a day to families who have children that are in school. This would help offset your costs, and then as well as taking care of needs in the community, because there are families who really need food as of now, because we've known the Chattanooga food bank is low on supply, low on food. And so that would kind of offset that, kind of kill two birds with one stone, if you will. So that's just one of the ideas that I have in regards to how we can help small businesses and families alike as they struggle to take care of their families and the needs that they need to meet during this pandemic.
I think you can look at what I've already done. So as a small business owner myself, we are struggling and have struggled. So I not only emphasize, I'm right there in the mix. So let's look at what we have done. We've provided through the City Care Acts funds, and I think that is tremendous. If you look at what we did right when we came back from Christmas, we had several mechanisms, some CARES Act money that came through that we had started discussing. And I was very anxious to get that money into the hands of small business owners where it belongs. And when we made that motion, the first day back from the Christmas break, we approved it. And also I called for an emergency meeting the next day in order to free up those funds immediately. That's what experience on the council is very important, is understanding even those tools that you have at your disposal, or being able to think that fast on your feet. That's something that comes with experience, and our city really needs that right now.
I certainly understand the impact of COVID. We're a small business. Our business has been dramatically impacted. We sell socks to retail stores across the country. Many of them are small independent businesses. who are struggling very, very heavily under COVID. Our business is probably 40 to 50% lower in 2020 than it was in 2019. I watched some of the decision making in city government with regards to the funding that they have received from the state and federal level, and kind of wonder sometimes if we're being as smart as we can with regards to the resources we have to bring to bear. I've been out knocking on doors now for the last 3 weeks and have met a number of people who've lost their jobs as a result of COVID, that had COVID not hit would be comfortably moving along. I think we've got to be way more intelligent about making resources available to families that are struggling to stay in their houses or their apartments, and making sure that we have resources available in the way of food support and so forth for the food bank and other entities around town. It's unbelievable the number of folks who have been forced to go to the food banks of Chattanooga and surrounding areas to just keep food on the table for their families. And I think we've got to be ultra smart about partnering with the right organizations around town to make sure that the resources we've got are getting into the hands of those most needy, and that we've done it in a way to ease the access and not sort of make the process complicated.
That's a really great question, and I think our whole world is dealing with that question. But let's focus on Chattanooga. I think to the extent that they can, the city council to date has kind of dealt with that with some I would call it maybe emergency or added funding, whether that's for businesses or for families particularly hard hit with like rent assistance and food assistance, those types of things. I think we need to kind of keep looking for those opportunities to do that. One of the other things, if you take a look at the city's financial picture and their budget, the city does have an unrestricted fund balance, right? And that's in excess of about $70 million. Now, that's something maybe to take a look at, right? Is that something? Clearly prudent fiscal management requires you to set up reserves and make sure you have something put away, right? It helps your city's bond rating. It helps, your overall ability to provide services. But, to the extent that would be a rainy day set aside, we're definitely in a rainy day. We're in a storm, right? And so whether by ordinance or what mechanism, to me, that would be one place to look. Could we go into that reserve fund, if you will, and find extra funding that could provide some additional assistance to businesses and families as we go through COVID and get to wherever that's going to be once we kind of get through that. Another thing relative to the budget, and I think there's validity to it, the city uses a budgeting for outcomes method. And it's almost like an RFP process where they go out and solicit, if you will, potential projects or uses for funding. I think we need to go kind of through the budget and see what is there that really maybe shouldn't be on an annual basis, is something we should keep on going that could apply and help through COVID. And I do worry about that a little bit. With this election, there is going to be a turnover in mayor, and there's going to be a turnover on city council one way or the other. And certainly the mayor has the discretion. So outgoing Mayor Burke is going to do a budget, but the incoming mayor has the ability to change that. So I think we need to be very cautious and keep in the front windshield, COVID and what are the things that we can do, what are we doing, and what can we do in that budget to help families and businesses as we go through this.
So, of course, the city has received millions of dollars from the CARES Act. And so I'm super excited that President Joe Biden has looked to continue to extend resources to municipal governments, and even by extending the moratorium of making sure people are not evicted out of their homes. One of the things that I would like to see continued is support of making sure those funds go go to people, whether it's just for their mortgage, whether it's for their rent, LIHEAP, so for their utilities, ensuring that they keep a roof over their head, they have internet access to stay engaged, that they have electricity and water and sewage all paid. And the other thing that I would have to say is I want to see a continuance of the legal assistance that came through a creative partnership with Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise of ensuring that there was legal aid for people who might have been illegally evicted, who might not know their renters' rights. And so making sure people are able to understand, even if they have been introduced with an eviction notice, that they still have rights and can potentially stay in their home. I would like to see that continue, but I would like to see an expansion of making sure that we do not forget our local community businesses. I am so sad that I have seen community businesses like the Palace downtown, where artists that I know and have supported will no longer be able to go there and have shows or do things for the future. Just seeing small businesses close saddens my heart. So I would like to see us tap into maybe rainy day funds to ensure that we keep small businesses in our communities open and we don't have a further cyclical downturn of our economy because we are seeing small businesses close their doors permanently.
One of the things we have to do is I totally have problems with these loans that they want to give small businesses. My thing is, if they could afford to pay back a loan, they wouldn't need the loan. If that kind of makes sense, because theoretically what you're doing is creating another bill. If they get $10,000 or $15,000 through the incentive program, the COVAC incentive program that the city is doing, you're just now tacked on another bill. And so now, not only are they having to worry about keeping their business open and sustaining and keeping employees, now they got another bill of paying this money back that they got for assistance. So I think we need to do a better job of finding, here again, creative ways of getting grant money or getting other elements to where we help the business. And the same thing with the businesses, that you have to set up for what I call a rainy day. This is a rainy day now, it's pouring. You know, you have to have things in place in your small businesses as well to be able to sustain certain things. And I think a lot of the small businesses probably don't know how to structure or how to do that. A lot of them is just going from month to month. You know, they whatever they make, they go ahead and pay bills, pay their, employees if they got 1 or 2 employees, then try to live off of it with themselves too. And so I think it's more so of a month-to-month thing versus really sitting down strategic planning. Okay, I need to set X amount of money aside each month for just in case something happens, or if I have a restaurant, if the refrigerator goes out, if the air system goes out. We have to do those type of things. And sometimes it's just so big, the crisis is so big, no matter what we did, it's just not enough. So I think we need to help these small business do a little bit more of strategic planning for incidents like this and how they can strategic plan to grow their business, how they can strategically plan on maintaining their stuff and employees, how to run a better business. I think a lot of them just really don't know, they just been there 20, 30 years and never had to deal with anything like this. And so it shows the different areas where improvement is needed.
I'll answer the second one first. Yes, been there, done that. That was one of my top focuses when this hit. Worked very hard to reduce the impact as much as possible on businesses. The first thing, everybody shuts down. Well, again, that goes back to the unknown. We just didn't know how bad it was going to be. But I was also out there on the very front saying, let's not go too far to the extreme to when recovery is impossible, not just for the individual, but the business. And when a business can't recover, the people that work there can't recover. When they don't have income, now you've got mortgages, you've got rents, you've got all the downstream effects of a single business suffering because of COVID. So one of my priorities and focuses immediately was to look at how can we help allow businesses to continue to operate, allow people to continue to earn an income. And one of those, something that you don't think about. When we first talked about restaurants, well, you're allowed to do to-go orders. No in dining. That was great. That was a conversation we had, but it was also just a really quick decision on how to handle that. What wasn't thought of, and what I brought to the table afterwards, and thankfully we were able to get at it, is we've got other businesses that take a brewery. By permit law, they can't sell beer without selling food as a to-go or anything else. So we've got businesses whose product goes stale. It can't sit, it can't be stored. They literally will not be able to operate or even survive into the future. So worked very hard with the administration for an update to an executive order that did allow businesses like that, despite restrictions in a local permit, to be able to continue to conduct business and just sell in a different way. That kept people employed. It kept those businesses open. It kept our local economy flowing as much as possible. So these are all things I've already done. These are all things I will continue to do. And it's having that level of experience in understanding both business and what's possible from a government standpoint that I think is really going to be critical in this next year, because again, we don't know. Is it going to get better? Yes, we hope so, but we don't know. We could get hit with another wave that was worse than the first. And we need to have some experience on how to respond to that and ensure that people are able to continue to make a living and adjust to this new environment, this new world that we're all having to live in.
Businesses are doing their best to adapt through the use of quick and creative measures. It's really hard for them to adapt whenever we're putting more restrictions on them. So I feel like every mandate we place, it makes it more difficult for businesses to adapt. And I want to see us be able to make those decisions, and businesses are able to run the way that they need to in order to survive. Once we start removing some of the restrictions, they're going to be able to thrive in the best way. As a mom, I mean, I have to balance my family's budget, so maybe we can help with budget balancing and set aside for the future for the city instead of putting it in pockets that don't go. So I think auditing where we're spending money and how we can help those that are hit the hardest is going to be a huge factor.
I definitely would love to talk to each of my communities and talk with them about what they feel is important within their neighborhoods and create some kind of task force within District 8 to talk about transportation, so we can meet, so we can see, all right, how are we growing and what do we need to do to grow? Didn't mention earlier, but I am in the Army National Guard. And one thing that we do with the military is AAR, so after action reports. And I definitely would love to see that in all aspects of city government if elected, because I think it's time for us to start seeing, okay, if we're going to increase budgets here, what is happening? Like, let's go down this journey so we know when we do the budget process for the next proposal year that we know, okay, that didn't work. We gave $1 million and nothing changed. So we're going to cut from there. And I think that's going to hold so many people accountable to actually make sure that they're getting done what they say they are.
We need a transfer station. That's 100% in the plan. Talking to different people, they want to place it downtown. So I want to do everything in my power to advocate for that. So many people will express things that, hey, I will do this. And it is very hard to self-impose and say, I'm going to make that happen. And, at the end of it, you let a lot of people down. So just like with transportation, I want to make it so all transportation is free to where nobody will have to pay to ride the bus. That would also be another $2 million to add to the already $4 million budget that Carter is receiving. And that seems like a drop in the budget to a $300 million budget. But we also have to figure out a way to get our firefighters to a fair salary, get our workers to $15 an hour. at the end of the day, it's just really not enough money. You either have to make some cuts or you have to raise taxes. And, you know, people don't want to hear those things, because if you make cuts, people lose their job. You raise taxes, our constituents hurt the most. We've been fighting for the past 4 years. If you look at every meeting, we've been fighting for a $10 million paving budget across the board, because, you know, people get so many phone calls that I need sidewalks. Like in Lincoln Park right now, I get calls they need sidewalks out there on Scruggs Street, and we need more speed humps and more, you know, potholes filled, but it's just the finance to get it done is not there. So this next administration, including myself, we're going to have to make some very hard decisions to take care of the people who put us in office. And I'm willing to make those hard decisions, but it's going to be, it's going to take some time to make sure that we're not putting anyone in harm's way or putting anyone out, and we're not hurting the pockets of the people that, you know, belong to our city.
That's another thing about our community, our District 5 and other communities. We just feel that a lot of the paving money, the majority, and the employees, the public works, they're the department heads, I'll say that they are the ones to assign the staff. They focus more on downtown with paving monies and, you know, major paving projects. Now, we may get a road paved, half a road, or a pothole filled, half the block, but I think they need to. Now, that's one thing I would pursue as far as pursuing more money directed towards the City Council District 5 budget, because I know each City Council district get their own certain amount of the budget to do what they need to do with. So communities need more help in paving. We need our roads repaired. You know, we are, I always say, I describe District 5 communities as generational homes, generational neighborhoods, you know, passed down to the next generation. We have beautiful homes, beautiful, well-kept, maintained homes, all the way from Woodmore going all the way to Washington Hills, Bunny Oaks. It's amazing. If you really drive through the subdivisions, these subdivisions look like cities with beautiful homes. But the outer roads, that's where we need more attention as far as road paving, more public works help. And when we do call or put in requests, we're always told that the city and the public works are too short-handed. But then we drive downtown and we see, you know, weekend workers working to keep downtown clean, which is nice. But then we want to drive back home with our out-of-town relatives and friends and drive through nice neighborhoods to get to our beautiful subdivisions. So we need more attention on communities. And I guess with, you know, with the coronavirus and slow tourism, we may pay more attention to communities.
One of the things I support as far as improving our transportation infrastructure is one, maybe we could make public transportation free. I know that seems outside of the box, but I think that not only will, as an environmental justice advocate, I believe in lessening our carbon footprint. And so maybe if we can make public transportation free, more people will take the public transportation system. It'll improve our streets because less people are on the streets, and improve the environment. Chattanooga is behind in street paving. My street just got paved probably about a month ago. And I worked with, again, our neighborhood association president, and we were just strong advocates in making sure that neighborhoods who oftentimes get left behind, that we're at the forefront of funding decisions. So I will work, again, I know you have some mayoral candidates who have pledged millions of dollars into those paving projects. I support that. My main goal is to make sure those paving projects are reaching District 5. And so that's what I will be a strong advocate for. And I look forward to working with council members and whoever the future mayor is to make that a priority.
I honestly think our transportation system is outdated. Because when you go and visit other thriving cities, they have all kind of transportation options. But what I would love to see Carter do is create like a centralized location for transportation. So it reduces people from just hanging out on the street waiting on a transfer. It alleviates that burden at this centralized location. You can have subway, you can have, different options of transporting around the city of Chattanooga. And that makes it more safer for us. And it connects you to different things if you want to go to parks or, just want to walk or, anything like that. And then everybody can transfer with safety in mind. But not just outside of that, right? We need to create opportunities where we have our transportation, public transportation. We need to have some corridors set up that is fair and it's free. And right. So, because everybody may not want to ride the bus all the way from Hamilton Place to straight downtown, and they just may want to catch the bus to go 3 blocks in between. Well, hey, if that little 3-block radius is free, then it also frees up a lot of traffic that's on the roads and different things like that. But yes, we do need additional dollars when we talk about our paving with our streets, because our roads have just been unkept for, decades. And then, but it's more than just about paving the road, right? Because up under the streets, we have pipes with our water that's going, the water infrastructure and everything like that. So if we sometimes see a road that's kind of dented in and failing and things like that, the trenches are failing. And that means the water supply, we got to take a deeper look, the water, the sewer that's under that road, because we can pave it. If the pipes underneath is something going on with our sewer and water lines, then that's a whole different story. It has to be fixed. And that's a lot of things that's happening with our road as well. And then when we talk about it, Joe, we got to consider the litter that's being thrown out on our roads, right? It can cause traffic related incidents and different things like that. So it's a lot that I take, I view it for a holistic lens, is that we have just take a bigger look at what's really happening when we're talking about our road infrastructure, because it's a lot that's going on, and also with our pedestrians as well.
I know people have been talking about going to a free fare on the bus system. And on the West Coast, I've taken a look out in Oregon and Washington areas, and they've gone to that, and it's actually increased ridership. So conversely, that's taken more people off the roads, which would help benefit the roads from a traffic and congestion standpoint. But it also will reduce pollution. So I think that is something we need to take a look at. Once again, with COVID and some other issues going on, we really need to prioritize what our spend is going to be this year. But that is a longer term goal I would like to take a look at. The potholes, I talked to one constituent while doing some canvassing, and he had concerns with how the paving is being done, as he actually owned his own paving company, and suggested some solutions. So I would like to get some more insight from experts in the business on how we could improve our paving.
Well, here again, I'm encouraged that that we've got the mayoral candidates acknowledging paving as an issue. I think that one of the things that is often not talked about, or is and whatever, is CARTA, and how CARTA can really sort of, if we're going to talk about economic mobility, CARTA has got to be at the table. And one of the things they're looking at a lot of innovative ways. They recently got a Department of Transportation grant for $3.2 million to work with Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, and UTC into really looking at how you can use technology and sort of maybe and this is an oversimplification, but Uber for buses, and so you can bring people to the routes. I think that there's the mayoral candidates are talking about in a lot of cases sort of free CARTA transit. And if they can figure out how to do that, that's wonderful. But what I hope doesn't happen is that that CARTA's budget doesn't get reduced to take care of free transit. We've got to find other funds. And I think in all these things is that we don't know yet what the income for the city has been this year. My suspect is that a lot of folks will not be paying property taxes because of what's happened. And so we've got to do more with less. But what I'm encouraged by is that, I think everybody running for council, everybody running for mayor, all sort of have the same MO, is that we've got to really sort of focus back on some of the basics.
one of the things we should add to, you're right, that we have a lot of problems with our roads, and it's one of the biggest issues from the people in District 5. They say that the roads are the major concern for us. I think one thing we should invest, we are the city, we were called the choo-choo city. I think we should invest in train and rail. I think that would be a cleaner, it would be cleaner for the atmosphere, with less cars on the street, less gas is burnt. And we should invest in train and rail, train and rail. That's one route we should go in the future.
It's definitely time that we make infrastructure a priority within our city budget. All throughout District 2, people are extraordinarily frustrated with the state of the roads, and we absolutely have to put more emphasis on fixing potholes and maintaining our roads in the coming years. Also, when it comes to infrastructure, District 2 has seen firsthand the result of neglecting our stormwater and our wastewater infrastructure. We have homeowners who are who've had to rebuild entire structures like garages because of erosion. We have neighbors that have been suffering with raw sewage in their yard every time it rains. It's ridiculous, and it has to be a priority. Now, as we think about transportation at large, District 2 has one bus line, runs straight up Hickson Pike. And something that our neighbors are talking about quite a lot as it relates to transportation is that it's quite unsafe for pedestrians on our main thoroughfares in District 2. So if you are riding the bus and you get off on Hickson Pike, if you need to hop on the bus to go the opposite direction, you have to cross 5 lanes of traffic unprotected. We also have folks that use electric wheelchairs to get around, and they're navigating the full width of Hickson Pike on an electric wheelchair without any kind of protected crossing. Also, Norcross is a road that has quite a bit of pedestrian traffic, and it has drop-off ditches on either side of the road. And so as people walk along, it's really unsafe. So those are specific to District 2. Citywide, there's a large conversation about how we might expand our public transportation. And I've spoken with a lot of people to learn more about that. And I do feel like we're going to need to have some type of catalytic event in Chattanooga to help us come to a common understanding of our value of public transportation. Because right now, we're in a chicken and an egg situation where the bus routes don't really cover a lot of areas, and people face the challenges that I just described. And so people don't ride. But if people would ride, then we would have more revenue to be able, and more cause to expand our public transportation. So, when our schools closed back in the spring, our buildings closed, we suddenly had this catalytic moment in Chattanooga where employers and individuals recognized that internet connectivity was no longer a luxury. It was, in fact, something that our students and our workers all needed access to, and quickly. And so I wonder what the catalytic event that will cause a conversation and a shared experience around public transportation will be. Certainly interested to have that conversation when the public is ready to really dig into it.
One of the most important things is that our bus system, Carter, for example, I think they don't go out far enough. They don't cover all of the areas that's really needed. And a lot of the residents that need transportation, they can't afford taxi cabs, they can't afford Uber, they can't afford Lyft, and they don't have the funds to pay for that type of transportation. And it seems like they can't depend on other people to transport them to the places they need to go. So I think that the busing system, that routing should be expanded tremendously, and which means you would have to have more drivers. You would have to expand the hours to where they are serving the community. So that would be the major factor right there. Make sure that the buses can go to all of the areas where residents are, and not just a limited group of people.
One of the transportation goals that I have, if I am elected to District 5 seat, is to find more ways to utilize CARTA. I know that there has been conversation around making CARTA free for everyone, which I would wholeheartedly agree with that. But when we understand the basics of economics, some things you just have to pay for. When you look at how CARTA is funded, CARTA is primarily funded through the fees, through the bus fares. So let's work together and find a way we can put some people that need work, put them to work. And if they do find a job, a well-paying job, that program can supply these individuals with a free pass that would also help transportation, give them a way back to and forth from work, and also including homeless people in that program as well, rehabilitating them back into general society by giving them a pass to use CARTA, but that program would take care of the fee. So it wouldn't put CARTA in a sticky situation, but it would help those that need transportation. Now, when it comes to infrastructure, there are a lot of potholes that need to be fixed in District 5 alone. I have tons of family members that live in this district. My parents live in this district, and my dad he's a baby boomer. And so every time he may run over a pothole, he just gets kind of frustrated and says, I can't believe it. So if he's doing that, then I can understand everybody's probably doing that. So the first thing I would be willing to do is let's go out, let's walk the streets. We need to see exactly where these potholes are, and we need to tackle them all at once. However it needs to be done, let's look at it. Let's, go line to line, see how much it'll cost. Will it create jobs? Will it, if it'll create jobs, let's get those jobs filled and let's get this taken care of.
Paving is one of our biggest priorities, and you mentioned the city conducting a poll. I was strongly in disagreement on the poll that was recently done by the city, and we did our own review. And if you'll note, going back a couple of weeks at council, we did something historic. Council actually presented from each district priorities, collaboration with constituents, and not relying simply on administration's outreach in the particular technique that they used. Our answers came from community meetings, obviously pre-COVID, years of experience on council. And you're right, paving and transportation infrastructure was a key priority for a majority of my constituents in District 4. So when we look at the last term, 2012 to 2016, District 4 suffered greatly and did not receive any paving. In my first term, I have increased paving in District 4 350%. And you say, well, why did that happen? It happens because I've been a small business owner in this city. I went to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga as a first-generation college student. I've built relationships here, Sarah Grace. I know how to work with people, not against them. And that's very important when working on a city council, because we do not work in silos. We work as a group and a team, and we support each other. And I had a lot of support from my council members, and that's why that we will continue to see increases in paving, and that I will continue to advocate for that, because 350% is nice, but that's just a start.
Back to my door knocking. If there's one thing that is consistently a theme from more people than anything else, it's the fact that we are terrible stewards of our infrastructure. We've got to pave our roads. If you look at the amount of money the city has contributed over the last 5 or 6 years to paving, and think about the miles of roads we've got, nobody who is really being honest with themselves would think that the budget is even close to taking care of what needs to be done. And the problem with this sort of situation is the longer you go without committing adequate resources and the worse the roads get, the more expensive it is to repair them. So we're digging a hole that is very, very difficult to get out of. The one other thing I would say that I think a lot of folks are frustrated by under the current mayoral administration, there's been a lot of talk about road diets and other things, particularly in the urban core of the city, where they have, in some regards, tried to sort of position us as a city of the future in terms of creating bike lanes and things of that sort. The realistic view is that the vast majority of Chattanoogans, because of the nature of our transportation system and the way our city is laid out, are not going to be able to take advantage of bus routes and biking, and they need their cars. And so we need to be smart about, and I aspire to trying to create a friendly environment for bikes and walkers and those sorts of things, but we need to be realistic in balancing that with the needs of people who actually have to commute to work in cars, and make sure that we're looking after both groups thoughtfully as we're making plans around things like road diets.
I'd certainly look for and advocate a set road improvement, road upgrade plan. It's something like, companies have a capital budget expenditure, right? They plan out for a year, 2 years, 3 years. What are kind of the capital investments we're going to need to make? I think the city needs to do that and be much more focused on developing that plan for the city roads going forward. I think, if you look at the budget and kind of project it out, the city has put into its 5-year projection some increased spending on road, which is, it's good to see, but even at the levels they're projecting, how much impact is that gonna have? And so I think there needs to be look at, where can we find additional sources in the budget that could even enhance that, that commitment and that allocation moving forward. On the transportation side, one way or the other, we're going to have to deal with the public transportation, whether CARTA is CARTA the answer. CARTA has certainly been cut back over the years. Or is there some other mechanism to be created, or can we enhance CARTA or evolve that to deal with some of the some of the ways we allow people to get around our entire area? I think that's something that probably is a little bit longer term view, and we're going to need to get people in addition to the city together to figure out how that happens and what that looks like.
I would have to break that down into 3 parts. I think we need to have short term, interim, and then long-term goals. The first thing that we need to do is we have to invest into CARTA and increase ride share, as well as increase routes where people will be able to get on and utilize public transportation. And so CARTA is one of many departments within our city that does not receive equitable budget funding, and we need to invest in that. Everybody does not have the privilege of having a car, and so we need not only a public transit system, but it needs to be up to date, it needs to be clean energy, and it also needs to be very efficient. The other thing is what are some medium or maybe some interim things that we could work on? Of course, we are seeing construction with the highway expansion. We have a corridor that they have been working on for the last several years that came from our regional transportation plan from 2040, which is a 19-mile rapid bus corridor. So ensuring that we have corridors that allow for rapid transportation for buses to be able to kind of bypass general traffic and get from one place to the next. And then, of course, long-term, thinking about how we can invest into something we've talked about for years, which is the light rail. We are a train town. That's one of the things that's famous about Chattanooga. And so why not think about in the future having a light rail system? And we have had a study for that as well. As a matter of fact, if you look at the plans, one of the pickup stops for that is right in East Chattanooga. So thinking about we need some diversity in how we maneuver people around, but also as we develop, things that we have to keep in mind is when we build, are we building communities around routes that are accessible to busing locations or hubs for transportation, things that we have to think about also as we develop.
Well, I know part of the problems as it relates to jobs is the routes of getting folks from certain urban areas out to those places that have, the Volkswagens, on a consistent basis. They have a few routes, but consistently getting folks availability to be able to get to those places to where they can work. Also, we have to make sure that we're using public transportation. A lot of times those routes is based upon how many people are getting on that bus, and going and actually using that transportation to go and use those things that we say that we need. So I think it's a twofold thing, that we need more accessible, more job-friendly routes. But at the same time, we need to make sure that when they do these type of things, that we actually use the transportation. For example, I see buses going up and down Brandon Road a lot. A lot of them are empty. They're not even half full. Right. So you're talking about fuel, you're talking about paying employees, benefits, you're talking about all those other things. So we have to make sure that when those things are accommodating us, that we actually use them to where it's a win-win for everybody. So I think it's a great responsibility, and I'm assuming you're talking about Carter, that Carter does their part, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we utilize the transportation that's out there. If you go to a lot of major cities, people have cars, but they'll ride on public transportation and park their car to get back and forth to work. One, it cuts down on traffic and those great things, but they also understand that if you don't utilize that, it will go away because at the end of the day, everybody's trying to make some money. So you have to adequately utilize those things, but it has to be a friendly thing with Carter to make sure that things are accessible to get people back and forth to and fro. I know when I was little, we didn't, growing up in a single parent home, we didn't have a car. So we would ride Carter, we would catch a bus, go downtown, get a transfer to go to Eastgate or go to North. We actually really, really used public transportation. So I think if we need to get back to that for Carter to be sustainable, but at the same time, it has to be people friendly, job friendly, in order to get the maximum of what their goal is, and then the maximum of the people being able to get taken care of.
Same type of goals, they just get bigger. When I first ran, our paving budget was $1.7 million. And just to put that in perspective, that people don't understand it, our road asset was about a $2 billion asset at the time. It's about $2.5 billion, probably more than that now. And only 1.7 million was being allocated to maintain it. And an asset that gets heavily used and abused by cars and weather every single day, day in, day out. So it was just ridiculous, the amount of money that we were spending to maintain that level of asset. So number one goal, increase that funding right away. And I'll just back up for a second to make it worse. In the early 2000s, the base resource, be it asphalt, just some of the core materials for paving increased 400% within, I think, by 2010. So what didn't go up was how much we were spending. So the cost is increasing by 300 to 400%, but our spend was not. So not only are we not spending much, but we're also getting way less for it. So the problem got huge really, really fast. So there's not a way to just turn around and put $200 million into paving, unfortunately. I would love to. So it is still chipping away at it. So as it is now, through the years of continuing to fight it, we've increased that budget to over $8 million now from 1.7. It probably needed to be 10 million back then just to keep up with our regular, let's say, good roads and some of the ones that needed to be repaved. So it's a much higher number now to continue to maintain and then repave but we're getting there. We're going in the right direction. And it's something that people want. They deal with it every day. And frankly, that's what we're supposed to be providing as a city, is our essential services, and roads and infrastructure, while it's never thought of unless it impacts you, are a huge piece of that. So one of the things that a few of us have talked about, and there's never really been a desire by the administration or the council as a whole to do it, is to implement a standard % of the operating budget to paving every single year. Because right now it's really at the whim of the administration. If they decided to present a budget with 2 million paving, we could oppose it as the council. We can insist that more money goes in there, but we can't spend it. We are not a spending authority. We're a legislative body. So it's very much a collaborative effort. However, if we are able to legislate a base amount that must be spent in paving every single year, then at least we have something solid to go on, despite who is in the mayor's administration at that time. So thinking through some of those things to ensure that we're going to continue to be able to put the, I would say adequate, but maybe not even adequate yet, but at least getting to the point where we are putting more money into roads and be able to do more projects across the entire city is definitely a goal, and something I'm hoping to work towards in this next administration and next council.
Transportation is very, it's very diverse. There are the CARTA. We could work with CARTA to make that more affordable for those that need that transportation. I would definitely like to see that work a little bit better for those that need it.